So BlackBerry didn't come back, but
No,
CBK did.
CBK did, and I think what happened is like, look, when the devices of BB10 kind of were going downhill, I went back to my day job, which was building mobile nations. So beyond CrackBerry, and being CBK and running that site, I was, one of the co-founders and chief operating officer and content officer at Mobile Nation. So we launched other properties for Android. So we built Android Central. We built iMore for the world of iPhone and
Oh.
Macs. We built Windows Central for Microsoft related products and started as Windows Phone Central and expanded to cover laptops and everything. And we started building, YouTube focused video first creator channels. So for example, Mr. Mobile started within Mobile Nations as a
Oh,
new a
okay.
new entity and brand built around a person, Michael Fisher, Mr. Mobile, who I absolutely loved because I used to watch his videos on Pocket Now, but Pocket Now had,
Uh-huh.
7 or 8 creators, and I would watch, some of them, but I'm like, my favorite videos were always Michael Fisher's. And I'm like, Michael needs his own channel. Like, why isn't he his own brand? So I
Oh,
had
you're
to work
taking me
on
back now, Kevin.
this
This
is
is this is
this
yeah.
this is Michael's story to tell in detail, but like it took me years to get Michael to go into a cocoon and become a beautiful butterfly of a creator, tech channel that and brand that he is. Um, so like we built a proper media company around what we were doing. And my goal was for each of our different websites, whether it was Android Central or iMore or Windows Central, to have their equivalent of a CBK, because the way I would tackle things, really worked as a business as much it was as I loved doing it as a hobby. Like if I won the lottery,
Oh, okay.
CBK would do nothing different in his life because I absolutely like, one and the same, Kevin CBK, but there's nothing I like more than just doing tech content. Like to me, it was the dream job I would do for free if I could, but we had to make a business out of it too at the time.
Sure.
And Renee Ritchie became a CrackBerry Kevin of sorts in the world of Apple. And, with great success, now he has an amazing job. He's actually at YouTube as the creator liaison. So his full-time gig is working with the Mr. Beasts and everybody of the world as almost the rep of the creator community to YouTube proper. And I visited him a month and a half ago in at HQ there at YouTube HQ. It's just so cool to see that what started for him is his passion for covering like Apple products, and he started in a forum community, turned into creating content about iPhones and that full time. He turned it into his own YouTube channel over time, and then he turned it into working in his absolute dream job, being the creator, working with all the creators, which is so cool. And you know, Dan Rubino, same thing, became kind of like the CrackBerry Kevin of that Microsoft ecosystem, and still is to this day. So I had the privilege of just working along so many amazing people, but that became my day job: is how do we build the business to help create more opportunity for more creators and tech enthusiasts in the space. So when CrackBerry Kevin does less BlackBerry things, I just put my time into trying to give back to the community and build up more creators and build, at the time, build Mobile Nations into a bigger business, but give more opportunity to people who just love this as a passion. And one of the things we did there was really recruit and build from the community. So if you look at, for example, a guy like Adam Matlock today, Tech Odyssey, who I love, and he really picked
Yeah.
up the BlackBerry torch. No pun, but pun intended. Um,
Ah.
I don't think I have a torch within hand reach here. It's probably in my box back there. Adam was actually contributing to CrackBerry and Mobile Nations as a community reviewer. Like we took members of the community and said, "Hey,
I did not know
if you
that.
want to try blogging and you've never done it before, making some videos, like you can kind of almost like audition and try contributing, and we're going to give your content, the center stage as if you were one of the, pros who's been doing it for a long time." So Adam started to do that, and by day job, I think he was a lawyer, right? And then he started to do it, and he side hustled, and now he's living the dream with his own channel, and he's in the tech creator community doing all the things. And nothing brings me more pleasure than seeing how many people's lives have been changed, I think for the better for the most part, by taking their passion for tech and their love for it and being able to make a career out of it. Because again, when we're growing up, if you said, what do you want to do when you grow up, these jobs didn't exist, this opportunity didn't exist. But
Right.
that became Mobile Nations. And running Mobile Nations, at times, it made sense for CBK to come back out of retirement and go hard on BlackBerry again. So when devices like the BlackBerry Classic and Passport came out, I definitely gave them a lot of attention. The Priv, and then you kind of like, then it went DTech, and I'm like, John Chen you knew it was like, when you're in it so long, you already know what's going to happen. So this 2025 stuff is just amazing to me. And when Unihertz came out, I bought the phones, and I just never had good experiences. So every day I'm getting bugged. Every day I still get like tweets or DMs, or Kevin at crackberry.com gets an email saying, is there going to be a new BlackBerry? Will it be a new phone with buttons? And I never felt comfortable recommending Unihertz devices, because everyone I bought was like, I don't know, looks good online. It's not expensive, so you feel pretty confident in the price. Like, they're priced very competitively. Right. And then after a week of use, like, what starts off okay ends up, software is not as great and it gets laggy. And and there's design decisions they put into it from day one, where in my head, like I said, I give them tons of credit, but I'm like, this is not a QWERTY design person building this product. There are design decisions that have been made, maybe initially to avoid lawsuits or something, but like, when your freaking buttons are up to go, and you're going up to go down on shift keys and alt keys, I'm like, this does not work. And like, a really short space bar is inefficient for typing. Like, for every keystroke, I need to move my thumb further to reach the space bar. That literally shaves off 10 words a minute if you're not, like, so many things that I'm like, this is a knockoff BlackBerry. I love that they're giving a solution to the people who need to have a phone with buttons, but I'm just like, I could never for the life of me as CBK start to push this out there to the world. And I also didn't want to, like, after seeing the onward mobility hype and the sizzle and the fizzle, I'm just like, oh my God, like, I don't want to see like the hearts continually get broken. So like, it's never been something I've jumped on promoting. And but all the credit to them. And the new Titan 2, actually, like, I'm excited to get that and see how it holds up, because on the surface, it looks more compelling. I'm not the hugest fan of the Passport size devices. Like, again, I think you're moving your thumbs too far for every keystroke to be a really like efficient, fast, for my size hands and thumbs. Like, it's not my favorite. But if you have maybe different shaped thumbs, hands, sizes, like, people love their Passport, and all the power to them. So I think it's great that they have something that's like close. And I don't know.
Well, let me ask you this,
crazy
Kevin.
Now that BlackBerry's back and all this stuff is dropping in 2025, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, it's amazing and I love it, but I'm just like, my mind is equally boggled.
Let me ask you this. This is a perfect transition, and I'm going to do something right now that pains me, but you kind of gave me a little opportunity, so I think I'm going to take it. I would love to maybe stick a giant pin in clicks, invite you back on, and we dive into that, because I do want to ask you about, and I love clicks. I mean, I've got the
like
boxes of them.
Everybody who's listening to this has probably heard of clicks by now, and they
yes.
So there's.
But what I do want to know about is, we talked a little bit about how BlackBerry is trending somehow. We've talked about the Titan. I would love to get your thoughts on this shift that we are starting to see. It's by no means mainstream, and maybe never will be, but we're starting to see people shift towards more of a productivity-focused approach to technology, specifically mobile technology, consumer technology. Again, similar in vein in some ways to those BlackBerry days of the past, and companies are kind of answering that call. We talked about the Zinwa, kind of the Restomod, the Passion Project, but there are some other ones. You've mentioned the Unihertz Titan line. There's the new I don't know if they call it Eco or Ico Audio has a new device coming out with,
oh my God,
with a big QWERTY attachment on there.
And they even used all the same colors. They didn't even try not to rip off clicks.
Colors.
I'm like, I don't want to go there on this one. I just laughed. I'm like, we have certain patents in certain countries, so I don't know what'll happen with it longer term, but it's just also like, you literally took all the colors I hand selected in 2024 and you
Yes.
use
Yep.
the exact same Pantones. I'm just like chuckling at myself, but it looks cool. It looks very
Yes.
interesting. So
So
carry on.
yes, and we could talk. Maybe we could
Yeah.
talk about that on the clicks
Yeah, but we
discussion at a later
talk
time.
about
But
the alternatives that are awesome. Side
yes,
phone.
exactly, and that's what I'm wondering. So, where do you see all of this going? Where is this marriage between this new? I don't know if I would call it full digital minimalism, but certainly a
Yeah.
intentional tech focus or productivity based approach to tech in conjunction with these devices, these tactile. There are buttons there. There's a full
Yeah.
QWERTY. What do you look forward to in this as far as the
Yeah.
devices go? Where do you see this movement going that seems to be in its early stages?
So I freaking love it. Where it ultimately goes is tricky, but what I love is that we're pulling back the pendulum, right? So if you think about the pendulum swinging from like the original Blackberries being privacy and security focused to then it becomes consumption devices, and now we're just doom scrolling through our days. You know,
Yep.
now there's this notion of like the pendulum swung a little too far. We all seem to be getting a little bit dumber, like throw on chat GPT and AI doing all our thinking for us. And like
Oh,
we're
Kevin,
slowly,
don't
we're
even
slowly
talk
just
about.
becoming not good as humans. We're becoming operators of tech, but not as smart as we used to be. And I
Well,
think
the
people
tech
are
is doing the
realizing
living for us.
the tech's doing the living for us too much to a point of now we're not using our creative brains. We're not
Right.
building with our hands. Like we're losing something. And I think people are realizing that. And what I love is being a when BlackBerry lost its way and started to trend down, it actually became hard to be a BlackBerry user still. You had to justify yourself, right? So the
Right.
same way that Kevin, who got his BlackBerry in 2005, started to talk to flip phone users and T9 users and be like, "What are you doing, dude? Upgrade to a BlackBerry. Get on this train. You're living in like the past." Well, what happens? Touchscreens become that. And if you're living on a phone with buttons, you're now the one living in the past. You need to upgrade to a touchscreen phone. And
Interesting.
you had to really justify and be okay with being like signaled out as an old BlackBerry user living in the past while touchscreens take over the world. And I think actually we started it last year with Clicks because we got so much attention and we launched Clicks in the most Apple-like and non-BlackBerry way possible by going with
Very
bright
true.
colors, round buttons, some separation because if you sandwich a keyboard together with piano keys like at a glance at a distance, a Unihertz phone looks like a BlackBerry from 15 feet away, right? There's just no getting over it. Clicks does not. Clicks, people walk up to you using it on your phone. They say, "What phone is that? What phone is that?" And then they
Yep.
unpack, like, "Wait, that's an iPhone? Wait, what's going on?" But they never say, "What BlackBerry is that?" So, like, that was a very intentional
Yes.
decision by us. But that started to, like, enter the zeitgeist and kind of bring back, with the audiences who saw it, that, hey, okay, buttons are coming back. It's an option. And I think with the stuff that's happening on Gen Z with BlackBerry now, there's this nostalgia retro thing that's making it kind of hip again, to use this
Mm.
thing. And now I think what's happening is the intentionality of it is the key word because it's not that it's better or worse. You're intentionally picking this device. And people who understand why you're doing it can defend themselves if it comes up in conversation and be
Mm.
100% confident in why they're still using buttons in 2025 and why they might want a Zinwa BlackBerry as a second device or why they might have a Titan or why they put clicks on their iPhone or Pixel or Razorberry. And part of it can be a digital disconnect story. Part of it is a preference story. But it's actually now like I think with the tech intentionality side of things and a little bit the digital detox story, you can push back on the person who's only using an iPhone and be like, what do you mean you don't have a second device? Like, you're not using anything to disconnect properly from that on the weekends or to get more
Oh,
intentional. Like,
interesting,
you're
Kevin.
the you're now the idiot who is still on the pendulum swinging way too far, who's doom scrolling your way into into the insanity asylum or whatever. Like, your
Right.
brain is going to suffer. So all of a sudden, we're the ones back in the know where the purpose-built tools aren't just a one size fits all, which is what the iPhone and flagship Samsungs and Pixels and that became. We're kind of saying, you know what? Maybe it's a little bit of a two tool world. And the generic smartphone is the right thing for most people for their primary for all the obvious reasons. But having a companion device, having the option of something that transforms your phone to be more intentional, which we hear from a lot of Clicks customers, are like, I put it on my iPhone or my Pixel, but now I feel like I'm more intentional with how I use my iPhone instead of just doom scrolling or whatever all day. Like
Ah,
it
it's
turns it
music to my
back
ears,
into a
Kevin.
productivity tool that you can feel good about because now you're back on the cutting edge of where the pendulum is swinging versus feeling like you're trying to bring back the past. And I think Jake, we've talked about it before where it's like people sometimes use the word retro wrong, and it's like,
Hmm.
well, there's vintage, which is let's just take old stuff and use it today. But
Right.
then the notion of like retro or retro future, which is like let's take a
Hmm.
nod from the past and incorporate it into today and take the best lessons and things from before and
Exactly.
find a more optimal
Exactly.
place to be. And I think
Yep.
that's where we're getting to with this. So how big does it get? My hope is 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, it's just completely accepted and normal that you might have a full touch device. Like, I think the challenge is a lot of people will never give up their iPhones. And I'm in that camp. Like, it's the hub of my connected universe for
Hmm.
smart home products I have. Like, all my apps are on it. Like, the things are on it that are there. And even if I don't use it, I want it in the household as almost like a remote control, right?
Mm.
It's like my remote control to all these things. But, the thing in my hand or my pocket sometimes when I leave the house, I don't need it to be that because I just don't, right? And
Right.
having that secondary device or something is good. And for me, you know, my personal story was 2021 was the worst year of my life, right? I don't have a
Mm.
job. I'm out of my company. I'm sitting at home in Canada lockdowns during the pandemic, and my
Ooh.
friends are all still working because I'm the idiot who quit, and I'm just doom scrolling all day. I'm like sitting on the couch watching TV, scrolling my phone, and petting my dog, and maybe drinking a little too much, and my brain went into extreme overdose mode and I started to feel like what happened to me? Like this is a version of myself that I
Oh.
do not like at all. And I got out of it by going cold turkey and switching to a Punkt MPO1 or sorry, MPO2 phone, right? Which is basically
Okay.
you can call it a dumb phone or a diet phone or it's a very basic back to T9 style device
Yeah, that's a that I mean
but
that is
but
a
with a beautiful design ID, so it feels so good in the hand, and it's a little bit pricey, so it's a little bit of an object of desire. So while you're going
mhm.
cold turkey, you have this thing that's like a neat feeling gadget. It just does nothing, and
Mm.
getting on this for a while was enough to get over the dopamine addiction of endless daytime scrolling and I started to like get my mojo back and it came back not overnight. It took a little while and I started to realize wow, like when I wrote that original CrackBerry book in '09, I didn't believe in the book. I've given interviews back
Oh,
in,
interesting.
2011, 2015 about digital overload and detox. I'm like, yeah, I'm just like I'm a guy giving an interview about a problem, but I'm like, it's not really a problem. Like, it's fine. We're all
Okay.
going to be fine. And then when I hit my rock bottom, I'm like, this is actually a mega, mega problem. And the world
Mhm.
is, art like, and parents with young kids are taking like attention to it and they're realizing they need to do different things with their kids. They can't just give them iPads to raise them. Like, there's problems that are coming from that. Like,
Yep.
it's starting to poke out. And I think the world has really realized, like, yeah, the pendulum swung too far. There's real physiological damage that's happening to our brains and our bodies and stuff from this too much screen time, too much dopamine all the time. And it's got to come back. And I think these, what I'm going to call purpose built devices, whether they're messaging focused, whether it's productivity focused, whether it's in this case, like, it ain't productive. It ain't
Mm.
a great messaging phone, but it was the cold turkey I needed to kind of snap out of it and get
And
more
very purpose
intentional.
built. I mean, it was
Very purpose
created for
built. It was
that.
created that. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I realized the power of that space and I really hope all the companies who are building in it find their way. But, the problem I see is like startups are hard. It is all startup, smaller companies who are tackling this. So you look at, say, Light Phone. They've been doing it. There are a few versions of device in. They've been doing it for a
Mm-hmm.
while. They're still here, but I don't think they're probably very mainstream. The Light Phone 3, I love the look of. They built, kind of like this. It's like even sexier hardware where you're like, it doesn't do a lot. It might be even aggravating to use in certain areas, but like the object is nice enough that it's going to help you get over not having your iPhone or Pixel or whatever in your hand to like play with it long enough to hopefully, I think, as a solution, snap you back into the best version of yourself and realize, oh, I need to be more intentional with tech. You know,
Well, and if I
yeah,
may, real quick, Kevin, this is something that for me, as you know, folks here may or may not know, with Returning Retro, my main channel that this podcast is based off of, it really was one of those moments similar to the one you described in your own life. Of I just kind of woke up to realize just how bad my, call it, tech addiction, screen addiction, constantly
totally.
doom scrolling had become. But something that I find, and you kind of alluded to this a couple minutes ago, is the approach different people almost need to overcome this will be met as differently, with as different of a product or a solution as that person's personality is. So Light Phone, I think, is a great
Yeah,
example. Light Phone is probably going to be an excellent tool for many people, and just would not work for many others. Whereas you
exactly.
insert a clicks on a device,
Yep.
and bam, that is that combination. For me, if I may, it was an e-ink smartphone. The Big Me
Oh,
Hybrid
yeah,
Pro.
yeah, yeah.
Something
Yeah.
about it was a full smartphone. I mean, no restrictions from the software
Yeah.
side, which is another popular approach that's being taken by some companies, or developers out there. Something about the disconnect of just not having that vibrant, however many gazillion color display. It helped rewire me a little bit, which it sounds like maybe was a similar experience for
Definitely.
you with the Punkt.
Yep.
So I just think it's awesome that
Yep.
all of these options are seemingly coming out of the woodwork.
I love it, and I want them all to succeed because I just look at it. This is a planet of, how many billions of people? 6, 7, 8 billion people.
Right.
As everybody billions have smartphones. There is room for all of them to be big businesses, and I think the challenge we run into though is the earliest adopters of all of these products are also the most critical of them vocally on the internet.
Great point.
And
Great
Jake,
point.
like
Yep.
I know you spend a lot of time in Reddit. I spend a lot of time in the clicks Reddit, and we've sold over 100,000 clicks units. I think our Reddit has not even 2,000 people in it, but they're
Mhm.
also the most vocal ones. And they have everybody has the right to be vocal on things. And some things we do right as a company, some things it's going to take us a few cycles to get better. Like nothing is perfect in V1. And if you think back, the iPhone didn't ship with copy and paste, or like, or or 3G. Like it takes time for things to evolve into their best form. And early adopters are early adopters always. And I think when you're in this space. So like I look at, I have my minimal phone somewhere beside me here. Oh, here it is. Like again, backer 42. It took them longer to get to market than they wanted to. The software on this has still not been updated. Like I've had it for months, but to me it's pretty unusable. Um, do I send it back? Nope. Do I do an angry gram about it? Nope. I know the team is working really hard. Getting to this stage is hard enough for a company. I know they have very good intent, and I want to see them crush it and succeed, right? And I think it's like that's just it. Like it's the right people trying really hard. They got it. They got a roadmap here. All credit to them. But like it reminds me of I think what's gotten lost a little bit, and I don't mean to like, I'm not trying to crap on the community at all, because anybody listening at this point is like probably a hardcore fan of tech, BlackBerry, etc. They might like me, they might hate my guts and think I need to shut up, which they wouldn't be wrong. But I'm like, the reality is we're sometimes our own worst enemies of wanting to get to the state of all these products being here for everyone because the early adopters go for it. If there's anything wrong or things take a week or 6 months too long to get to market, this thing has a line through the screen and the flickering is whatever and the software's laggy. If that's all you see online, it just turns off people from buying it. And the good experience comes cycle 2, cycle 3. Like new products always take time to get to that point. And instead of thinking of yourself as like, if you want to see it get big and stay around, these companies have to get over that chasm and get to that size and scope and quality of experience everywhere. And it's the hardest type of company to work in. And I've had other e-commerce experience over the years to see how hard it is, right? So my hope is that, the product and the challenges it has and everything is one issue. The actual building a business that can scale and do like have more at bats to solve the problems, to build better systems, to win over the particular customers and everything, like you need time for that. And the people who are most vocal online on platforms like Reddit, they just go, whoa, they 10x the snark, they crank it up to the umpteenth level, and it comes across like that's the majority of the opinion because those people are spending time in those environments. But the craziest thing I've seen with clicks to the opposite effect, it's the emails I get. It's the people who have never logged into Reddit on their life or Twitter or something, and they just use the product in their day to day. And I get the thank you email, and they love it. And I know we'll save clicks for another episode, but just to paint the picture on this story, it's like, we will get emails from people, and the one that brings tears to my eyes is like, a mom saw clicks and bought it for her visually impaired low sight daughter and has changed her life on her iPhone because now she can use her iPhone in a way that she never could before. And, again, it's not like we have Braille on the buttons. You don't need it. You're it's like I said, you can type under a desk without looking at the phone once you have the skill. And, you can use the tab key to navigate the OS top to bottom instead of tapping at hoping you're hitting the right spot and listening to an AirPod to figure out where you tapped. So like Clicks has transformed that community. Brings tears to my eyes. We never expected that when we built Clicks. Living with Parkinson's. So, there's a Parkinson's community out there, the same way there's a, living with Parkinson's, the same way we have, a QWERTY community out there. And there's been some really prominent people in that community who found their way to Clicks, and they're young. They're not old people who've never had cell phones growing up. They are in their 40s with Parkinson's, and part of their protocol is to put it in because it's like they're finding it helps with their dexterity. They can grab it, they use it, they can build it up. And I'm like, mind blowing. Had no idea when we launched Clicks that we were going to actually help change people's lives for the better. I thought we were just bringing buttons back to the hardcore people who missed them, right? And then, the craziest thing, some of the executives and people who literally build and run the world who use Click. So, one of my favorite moments last year was the CEO of Amazon, Andy Jassy, his chief of staff reached out to us and is like, hey, Andy's a huge fan of the product. He's been using Click since the Founders Edition launched. One of his EAs saw the announcement, bought it, gave it to him, put it on his iPhone 14 Pro, and he loves it, right? And he's like, in the spirit of Amazon, we've got some feedback for you. We like to share with people. If you want the feedback from Andy, let us know. Me and Jeff Gadway, our CMO, and I think of him as really the most mature executive in the world of Clicks. He's very good.
Okay.
At all the things. Me and him fly to Seattle, and we literally spend, I don't know, 45 minutes or an hour at the end of I think it was a Thursday afternoon, in Andy Jassy's office, nerding out about buttons. And we just take his feedback, and he's like, the guy's dialed in. He's like, and I would want this. I want this. I like this. I understand it's a compromise. It makes the device longer, but honestly, the benefit it brings me, 100% worth it. We're showing him at that time. We're showing him our iPhone 16 prototypes and getting his feedback on how we're sculpting the buttons and changing the colors and materials and that. And I'm like, seriously, if you went back, if you and I sat down in another, at another time, and we said, hey, let's cook up a new business idea that, within 6 months of launch, it's going to be such an idea that Amazon's going to reach out to us, and the CEO of Amazon's going to want to talk to us about it. What would you cook up? And you're like,
fill in that blank. Yeah.
What are you going to do? And you're like, oh, I got an idea. Let's throw some buttons on the iPhone, and they're gonna come calling. And it's just,
Oh my
there's
gosh.
nothing. We're available on Amazon now, obviously, but I'm like, the fact that you have that caliber of person, and the story, like the stories we got told, I won't relay those. I don't even know if I should have told that story, but it's out there now. Um, it's just super cool. And like Walter Isaacson, the guy who literally wrote the Steve Jobs biography, I've had a couple of like hour-long Zoom calls with him because when he
Oh
saw
wow.
clicks, he bought it right away. And we talked to him and he's telling us stories. And when he was doing the Steve Jobs biography, you know, Steve's still alive, obviously, and iPhones launched, and he literally was arguing with Steve about how Steve shouldn't have got rid of the option of buttons on the iPhone. And he's like, I think it's a real
What?
disservice. And they had arguments about it. And Steve Jobs is Steve Jobs, obviously. Like, you can't take away anything. But it's like Walter used to like that was an argument. He's like, I think there should still be the option, right? And obviously in the world of Apple, like, what is an iPad? It is a bigger iPhone. You put a keyboard on an iPad, nobody thinks twice because putting buttons on a big screen makes you more productive. Why don't we type on touchscreen keyboards while we're at our desktop right now? Because that would be stupid. Buttons
Right.
make you better.
Yeah.
But the
Yep.
way frickin' Steve Jobs announces the iPhone to the world, and buttons are now in a horse and buggy
Mm-hmm.
past, it's like, nope, they're gone, not an option. And I think what's happened now is you're like, oh, it's not that crazy to do it, and it's not a dated thing anymore. It's actually an intentional thing, and there's benefits. And I just really hope that the option is there now to the day I die, and I hope that day is not in any time soon, right? I hope for a long time to come we have it, and hopefully they don't start calling, you know, it's not. Well, I mean, you could call it a boomer board. Hopefully, it's not senior tech because I don't think we're that old, Jake, right? But I do hope when I'm a full out senior, I have the option to still have buttons because I just prefer them. The same way you walk into a boardroom and some people have a pad of paper and a pen in their hand, and some people are on
Mm-hmm.
their laptops or phones taking notes or iPads taking notes on a keyboard. And you don't judge the paper pen people. It's just like they prefer a
Right.
paper pen. I don't. I prefer buttons, not a touchscreen. So such a crazy world. But how big does it get? I don't know. I think the question
Mm.
will be, do you start to see major brands offer some sort of a solution like this? And I don't know what scale of success you have to see from the light phones and the
Mm-hmm.
clicks of the world, of the minimal phones, of the punks of the world, before you see like, will Samsung do some sort of device?
Totally agree.
I think we have a portfolio, like we've always said, we're taking a long-term approach to clicks. So like, what you've seen is what you've seen, but just to keep in mind, I think the other thing in this space that's so funny is, we as consumers get products and we're like, they should have done this, they should do this, listen to my feedback. But I'm like, you realize if I listen to your feedback now, it's 12 or 18 months before you see it. And
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
gonna see something that probably has that feedback in it, but we started working on it before anything ever launched. And like I am actually our harshest critic, which is why I love diving into things like like a Reddit forum that's turned a little angry, because I'm actually looking for a new critique or a new piece of feedback or something that I haven't had
Mm.
myself, right? Like, me and Mr. Mobile, we're professional critics. We've done it for years and built our livelihoods off of being critical of tech products. We've witnessed thousands of product launches, good, bad, and everything in between. So we understand what can happen, but now we also understand what happens to companies when they're building and the challenges you run into. And you have a wish list of
Right.
these things, and you're like, well, if you want to do all these things in this product, it ain't launching until this date. You will have no
Yeah.
business to ever get
Yep.
there. And
Yep.
we have features cooking in the Cooks like our Clicks Labs division. We have features that have been cooking for a while, and they're on their own development path. And we need
Mm.
to launch products at certain times based on time to market. iPhone 17 is coming up. Is there going to be a clicks for iPhone 17? I don't know. Okay, I just don't want to leak anything here. But what's going to be in it? Well, what's going to be in it is some stuff. Maybe nothing new. Maybe some stuff will be ready to graduate. Maybe that's going to be another year before it's ready to go
Mm.
into, prime time. I'm looking at my phone here because I have, a version on my device which has capacitive scrolling on clicks, right? And I can I can basically
Oh,
use the keyboard, scroll through
look
and
at that.
operate. It's not making a clicks device anytime soon because the problem is at a hardware level, we can build
Okay.
it. At a software level, we can tap into iOS settings. And in the case of iOS, it has assistive touch. And assistive
Okay.
touch is almost like adding a mouse cursor to iOS.
Oh.
So we can have the capacitive keyboard act like a mouse, but then iOS puts this annoying like dot on the screen, like your cursor location of sorts,
Uh-huh.
and it's like a notification of in the way it looks, and we can't dial in and refine, the actual like sensitivity or turn it off. So you run into this issue where capacitive is always on. So if I'm actually in a typing field typing, but I flick a little too aggressively while typing,
Uh-huh.
you're going to kind of like flicker the screen as if you're trying to like swipe the screen, right, on the
And it's just
board.
gonna move around on you or
Yeah.
something.
And
Okay.
guess what? I don't have access to the iOS source code to change that, and
Oh,
maybe,
imagine that. Yep.
maybe if enough people buy them and love them and more people buy them, we can get to a volume where you never know. Maybe Apple's going to be like, hey, we need to enable this feature. And if maybe it's an accessibility feature as well as a productivity feature, and all of us people love it, maybe we can make it work, right? So, there's benefits to being an accessory. We can put buttons where you are and you don't need to switch phones, and you
Hmm.
can, relive that glory day. But obviously, if you can own the whole software hardware stack, there's more you can do to fine tune. So, um, it's just a fun space to be playing in. And you can tell I don't want to stop talking about it because I just get too jazzed up. No, what I was going to say is like, one of the things that we're looking at doing that's been so cool is, like I said, we're going to have some announcements in the fall that I think will be fun. I won't give away any
Ooh.
surprises, but I think we got some cleverness in the old Clicks Labs that it might be ready to get
Okay.
shown off, and that'll be cool. At the same time, I love the passion of the QWERTY community, and I look at these projects that are happening, and like I said, it's a tough business to be in. Um, you got to get products right. You got to do a lot of things right because once you take somebody's money, it's a community, but they're a customer, and
Mm.
customers have expectations, which I fully understand. But I think there's this notion of like, especially with clicks, we are members of the community. We've always been part of it. I've been, in the forums from day one. I've lurked when I've not been there actively. Like we're part of the same family. And what I really want to do is take part of Clicks, the company, and actually do what's called like a crowd equity raise, which is sell a portion of the company
Oh.
to your,
Okay.
to effectively customers, like retail, retail investors would be your technical term, but like where, almost like how you see a Kickstarter or Indiegogo launch where you're pledging money to buy a product. There's
Hmm.
platforms like WeFunder or Dealmaker where you use their technology, it's proper brokerage, and you can open up um, investment slots at different dollar levels for people, and they can buy a percentage ownership of the company, right? And you have to
Oh,
set some
cool.
minimum to it and maximum, and you can give some incentives along the way, and invest X dollars, and you can have a date once a year with Mr. Mobile. I don't know, like there's perks you can get along with it. But we've actually had some of our customers reach out to us and want to invest in the company, and we've had them invest now. So
Oh, cool.
seeing that happen, I'm like, how do we, it's amazing, right? It's never bet what you can't lose is always the number one rule. And obviously, like,
Mm.
I'm pouring everything I have into this. Our team is, we're building. So, you know, we have a lot to lose if it doesn't work out for the long haul, to the point of where do you want to see things going. But one of the things I think I want to see, where I want to see things go, is how do you bring the community with you as we build? Because you're going to get things right, you're going to get some things wrong, but you need to move. You need to keep moving forward as you get better and better and better. And
Mm.
you don't go into this thinking it's a 1 year thing. Like, oh, here's clicks. 1 year later, we're done. It's like, no, no. You have a decade perspective, right? Of it takes, things become an overnight success 10 years later. I've seen that I witness that all the time in
I like that.
business,
I
and
like
it's
that.
true, right? So I think we're here for the long haul, and I think it'd be really great to bring more of the community who wants to be part of that story into it in that capacity, not just as a customer and user, but to give them that chance to be a, to take ownership in the story themselves. Own in the upside if something happens, but we're not building it to sell it. And I, I'm one of the owners of the company, so I'm like, don't get paid. You're always the last person to get paid if you're
Sure.
if you're in that position. So I think it'd be super cool to see how that works, right? And I think we're working towards that for this fall as well. So if anybody's listened to this long, I'd love to get your feedback on that idea. Like shoot an email to Kevin@clicks.tech or Kevin@crackberry.com, and yeah, really curious. What do you think of that, Jake? Like, do you think that kind of like how do you bridge the gap between the products, the companies, and the community? Is that something you ever think about, or
I
do you?
I do I do. I think it's awesome to have not only to be a member of the community but be able to tangibly affect the community outside of just being a patron of the company, buying the products. I like it a lot, Kevin. I really do, and I think that with the QWERTY community narrowly, but even just this distraction free, productivity focused, intentionality with tech, I think that it could resonate. I really do.
I think it's the right type of when you look at the crowd equity platforms and the types of companies that I think do well there. If you're building something specific for a specific community, it's just it means a lot more, right? Like they want to
Yes.
see it exist, they want to see it thrive, right? They don't want it to go away. So I think it's interesting. So yeah, we're definitely looking at that, and I'm curious to see what'll
Well, and it
happen.
opens another
We
door.
might not do it, but
I
I think
think.
we want to do it, and we're working towards that path in the back end.
Well, and I think that these conversations I think are really good for people as well. And you and I have sort of talked a little bit about this offline a little bit. I've kind of dabbled a little bit in startup spaces, and I mean, Kevin, people just don't know what they don't know. They don't have a clue the things that
Yeah,
go into even just an idea getting put to paper, let alone,
yeah,
across the finish line and into retail outlets or direct to consumer or what have you. And there's an enormous amount of risk. There's an enormous amount of lift that has to happen from all of these different things going
yeah.
right. I think that what you're laying out here potentially kind of helps both the companies and the community alleviate some of that risk because now they're able to sort of pick up some of the slack that is there by there maybe not being as broad of appeal as say a Galaxy or an iPhone or something. So yeah, this is
Well,
really interesting,
it's
Kevin. You
definitely
you got me intrigued here.
yeah, and you think about other industries, like tech is maybe the last one to go this direction, where I do feel like in the, like consumer product goods, like CPG space, you've seen a lot of, I don't know if you call them celebrity brands or like influencer brands, and some of them are big. You get like your Kylie, your Jenners and your Logan
Mm,
Paul, like Paul's and Prime Energy drinks and Mr. Beast and
sure.
Feastables. You get like big name people launching products. And I think part of that is, well, they have big audiences, so they can get to cheaper marketing and make it work better. And but I think, and I mean that works, and it also there's a lot of examples of it. They think it's going to work and it doesn't. But I think when you look at technical products, you haven't really seen it happen. Maybe Mr. Mobile and CBK and Clicks is one of the rare examples, but our audiences are not like those, famous people. But I think what you see in our world here is like the knowledge in the community of what features, what functions like make sense are built on just millions of hours of use over 15 years. And you're like mining the community for what is that best experience. Like what are the features you truly want to see? And I think there's like you get a better product out of that the people like us, like having even a product like Clicks, right? If somebody just said, "Hey, I want to build this product," and they didn't have CBK and Mr. Mobile for the first version, and we brought in guys like Joseph Hofer who you know worked for BlackBerry and designed half of the half of the more than half of the black phones on my desk. Like he's the guy who did all the detail stuff and solved a lot of the problems on them. We had that, so it became a much better version one than it could have been. if we just, if
Right.
I was like, hey, I just want to build this, I'm going to go find a company and a designer, and you didn't have the informed tens of thousands of hours of product thing. But I think the community in it is the next thing, because as people use these products, like I said, I'm probably the most critical person of the product in a lot of ways. So like anything that I don't like, we're trying to fix. Anything Fisher doesn't like or anybody on the team likes, we're trying to like improve, improve, improve. It's only ever going to get better. Like the product is as bad as it can be at the start, and then it gets a little
Right.
better, and it gets better, and then it gets pretty good, and then it gets amazing. And some of it is just a function of time and sets and reps. But then what I see is the way the community uses the product. Like I talked about the Parkinson's example or the low sighted example. Well, now we have, part of the team is thinking about how do you take that sub community of this QWERTY community and think more about giving them a better experience, right? And you're
Right.
you're learning from everyone who's out there, and the biggest companies just cannot be bothered to like do what we're doing, right? We're infinitesimally small compared to the biggest, but I think we care more. And I think if there's one thing to anybody who's listening still that I hope came through today, other than we did a lot of seedy stuff back in the gray area days of the internet and early days of tech blogging that should have thrown us in jail, um, is we just care a lot about this, right? You know,
Yes. Yep.
I'm letting my wife get really upset right now at 10:47 p.m. because this is what I want to be doing, and she's gonna have to wait for me to come to bed. So it's that kind of thing.
Well, Kevin, I have to say I have had a thrilling time talking with you here. I do have one final question,
Yeah,
and I hope I don't keep you too much
we
longer
we
than
blew our one
you
hour
already.
target for your inaugural episode,
I
so
know, but
your next guest
it's
will do
worth it.
better.
Yeah, it's worth it, and I hope we do it again on the next one. Is Crackberry Kevin back? Are you back, my friend? Where can people find you? Where do you go from here, Kevin?
So yeah, great question. So you can find me probably most active with content on Instagram at Crackberry Kevin. Uh, you can find my text in the Clicks keyboard Reddit, where I'm sort of like, engaging with the community when there's issues, likes, dislikes, rants, etc. And I like to see what's happening from the most vocal community members. So I'm in there a bit. Um, I've kind of promised that I'm going to start doing content again, and I'm going to do some content again, but I don't think I have the time to become full out Crackberry Kevin again with like nonstop content 24/7. So my goal is to come back to the world of content a little bit, because I think
Okay.
I like creating. It's good for my brain. I like being engaged in content
Yes.
anyways, but similar to how we talked about doom scrolling all day and needing to like stop that to be productive again, I just find if I touch social in the morning, whether it's like if I open a Reddit thread in the morning, if I open Instagram and start reading comments and posting, it ruins my productivity that day. It's done. So I think I want to do content and engage, but I need to like really be disciplined to pick my hours of engagement and when, if we're going to continue executing on the dream vision that we're all working towards as a clicks team and beyond. So um,
Right.
you will see me do some content on probably my old channels. Maybe Crackberry on YouTube I think it needs a couple videos to get rid of that onward mobility one. That's the last one standing.
You gotta have
That
that
just
palate
feels
cleanser.
wrong.
Yeah.
That just feels wrong. I have been working on a best BlackBerry alternatives in 2025 article, which I'll then turn into a
Oh.
video. But honestly, from where I effing started it, there's more products that keep coming out. I'm like, oh my God, now I need to wait for my Titan 2 to come. I need to, I should wait for the minimal phone to get its software update. Now I
Mm.
want a Zin 1 device. So, I mean, it started with, it's like, it's a pretty easy article. It's like, question one, are you willing to leave your iPhone or not? If the answer is no, get yourself a Clicks. Question number two, are you willing to leave your flagship, Google Pixel or that? If no, get a Clicks. Then it's like, if you're willing to like have a purpose-built smartphone that you put a SIM into, do you want it to be your primary smartphone or secondary smartphone? This is less of a
Right.
review, more of like a choose your own adventure, because I
Exactly.
I think
Like.
it's very personal. And then after that, it's like, now here's what you're walking into, because none of the options are, a BlackBerry Classic circa 2014 or something like that, right? It's all a
Hmm.
different world we're living in. So you really got to figure out what works for you. But it's so nice to have the ability to like actually get a handful of devices on my table to
Yep.
use and try and learn and like nerd out on and see what works and doesn't for me, to think about the implications for maybe a more average person, or like just not even more
Yeah.
average, but
Yeah.
just like an average person, what they'd integrate in their life, and then to start weighing in on like what those solutions are. And I think what's nice for me is, in the world of CrackBerry Kevin, I used to, get iPhones and Android phones and review them. And I just was very clear about my bias up front. I'm like,
Hmm.
I love BlackBerry. You should buy a BlackBerry. Here's my thoughts on the new iPhone. Here's my thoughts on this. Like, where I stand. And I think there's a lot of like tech people over the years where they're like, I secretly love my iPhone, but I can't make enough videos a year if I don't actually like, use all these Android phones and talk about them. And these biases happen. Or the
Oh.
other way around. It's like I secretly hate my iPhone, but I won't get the views if I don't talk about it. So I got,
Yep.
and I think for me, it's like, hey, obviously we're building a company called Clicks. I want you to buy anything called Clicks and support it and love it and that. But I'll give you my honest opinion of everything I use because, A, a lot of people ask for it, but B, I've dedicated way too many years of my life and my thumbs have racked up just, too many millions of years to not share the opinions. And I've always been that kid who just, won't shut up, and he wants to share his opinions on the things he thinks he should be using, when especially if they're good.
Well, don't stop. We'll get you back on. I want to hear the dirty details about what it
Yeah,
took
yeah,
to
yeah.
get clicks off the ground.
We
But
should bring on Jeff Gadway because I feel like he's so much better at telling a concise story.
would love
But
would love to.
let's see what your people, look at your YouTube analytics after
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
and see how many people gave up after 5 minutes versus 2.5 hours. And if there's, what's our number? If there's 10 people at the end still listening, we'll come back and do a full feature length
I like it.
episode.
Yep. Let's do that. I like it. 10,
Well,
10 is good.
congratulations, Jake, on the new channel. I love that you're doing it. Like I said, your energy is awesome. I think the category you've defined needs to exist and be talked about, and it needs to grow big. So I really
Mm.
wish you nothing but success, and hope you, you know, uh, hopefully it's like, whether you want it to be the dream full-time job or side time hobby, whatever it is for you. I hope you get to do it the way you want to do it because it's really cool, and I love seeing the energy you got for it. And I think it's yeah, the world literally needs it, for the sake of our brains and our children's brains and our children's children's brains. Like, we got to pull back the world to thinking and creating on their
To
own.
we to return retro.
We
There
need
we
to
go.
return retro.
Thanks so much, Kevin. We'll leave it there. Friends, thanks so much for stopping in. Been a pleasure. We'll catch you all in the next one.